Imagine this dear friend you've just returned home from a long day, and instead of heading straight inside, you pause at the edge of your garden. The air greets you first soft, a little cooler than the day, carrying the faint perfume of earth and leaves. A quiet bird calls somewhere in the distance, and for a moment you feel your shoulders loosen. This is not just a yard. It's not just plants in pots. It is a sanctuary, a place stitched together by care, patience, and the quiet joy of being alive. You don't need sprawling acres or expensive landscaping to feel this way. You only need a corner where peace feels welcome. And that, my dear friend, is what we're going to explore together today. How to create a garden so inviting, so soothing that you'll look forward to stepping into it every single time you come home. When most people picture a dream garden, they imagine wide lawns, endless flower beds, or tall hedges swaying in the breeze. But the truth, my dear friend, is that peace and beauty don't require vastness. A small balcony, a narrow porch, or even the corner of a modest yard can hold just as much magic, sometimes even more. Smaller spaces invite us to be intentional. Every plant, every chair, every little detail has a purpose. Instead of overwhelming our eyes, a tiny space offers focus, a single scene that brings rest. I once visited a neighbor who had nothing more than a 5-foot stretch of concrete outside her apartment. You'd think nothing good could grow there. But she brought in one thrifted wicker chair, a pot of bright geraniums, and a small table holding a chipped teacup she'd planted with time. That was it. And yet, when I sat there with her, I felt completely transported. The hum of bees found their way to that time, and the warm sun hit her geranium blossoms in a way that made them glow. The lesson is this: you don't need size. You need intention. A single pot of lavender on a small step can invite fragrance that calms your spirit. A rescued wooden crate lined and filled with soil can be home to a handful of salad greens or cheerful pansies. And if all you have is a window ledge, you can still cradle a collection of jars with sprigs of mint or basil, their green, lifting your heart each time you open the curtain. A small space becomes powerful because it's within reach, literally and emotionally. You can tend it without strain. You can see its changes closely. And when you invite someone else to sit with you there, it feels intimate, like sharing a secret place. I remember a woman at church who told me her happiest memories were of a little stool set beside 2 clay pots her late husband had planted with marigolds. That stool was where she had morning tea for nearly a decade after his passing. It wasn't grand, it wasn't magazine-worthy, but it was hers, and it carried the layers of her life. Small spaces, when cared for, gather memories as well as plants. They remind us that life doesn't need to be wide to be deep. So as you think about your own garden, release the idea that it must impress anyone else. Instead, ask, what tiny corner could cradle me? Where could one thrifted chair and one blooming pot turn into a daily retreat? Your answer may be closer than you think, tucked into the very edges of the place you already call home. Before a single flower blooms or a vine climbs its trellis, comfort is the first seed of any relaxing garden. If you don't have a place to rest, to linger, to breathe slowly, the garden becomes a task instead of a refuge. Think of the times you've walked into a cozy living room. The softness of a chair invites you to stay. A garden works the same way. Start by giving yourself a seat, even if it's nothing more than a thrifted chair, a rescued bench from a yard sale, or an old rocking chair passed down from family. Worn wood or faded fabric can carry more charm than something brand new because it holds the marks of life already lived. With a soft cushion or a folded quilt, that chair becomes a throne of peace. I once knew a retired teacher who had only one small chair tucked between her rose bush and her kitchen door. She told me she sat there every morning with her tea, and the scent of those roses became part of her daily ritual. She didn't care that the paint on the chair was chipped or that the cushion didn't match anything else. It was hers, and it welcomed her into a rhythm of stillness. That is what comfort looks like. It doesn't require elegance, only a sense of being held. If lifting or moving heavy furniture feels daunting, start with light pieces. Plastic Adirondack chairs painted in soft pastel hues are surprisingly gentle on the eye and easy to manage. Folding bistro sets often found at thrift shops can be tucked away when not in use. The important part is not the style, but the invitation they create. Once you've set down a chair or two, consider where they face. Position them toward a favorite plant, the rising sun, or even a patch of sky where the evening light glows. When your eyes rest on something beautiful, your heart will follow. Comfort also means layering softness. A single pillow on your chair can change everything, especially when your back needs a little extra kindness. A thrifted quilt draped nearby makes evening chills less of a concern, turning your garden into an outdoor living room. For those with smaller porches or apartments, even a sturdy step stool with a cushion on top can serve as a seat. Don't underestimate the power of humble solutions. The truth is, creating comfort in the garden is not about money or fashion. It's about telling yourself you deserve a place to rest. When you build in comfort first, you'll naturally want to spend more time outside. And the more time you spend there, the more alive the garden becomes, not because the plants grow faster, but because your presence is what gives it life. A garden without its gardener is just soil and leaves. But a garden with someone sitting quietly in the middle of it becomes a story unfolding every day. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the last time you truly felt at peace. Was it on a porch where crickets sang at dusk? Or perhaps beside a gentle stream where the water's movement seemed to carry your worries away? Sound has a way of reaching the parts of us that sight alone cannot touch. In your relaxing garden, inviting soft, natural sounds is just as important as the flowers you plant. They create an invisible layer of comfort, one you feel more than you notice. You don't need an elaborate setup to bring sound into your space. A simple set of wind chimes hung near your seating area can transform the air itself. Every time a breeze stirs, the tones remind you to slow down. If metal chimes feel too sharp, bamboo chimes give off a gentler, hollow note like whispers from the earth. I once visited a friend whose thrifted chimes had long since lost their shine. But when they moved, their sound was so soft and low it felt like prayer beads being touched one by one. That sound lingered with me far longer than the sight of any flower. Water, too, has its way of softening the spirit. You don't need a large fountain or pond, just a small tabletop water feature can bring that soothing trickle. I know a woman who repurposed an old ceramic bowl, added a tiny pump from a hardware store, and created her own bubbling fountain for less than the cost of a dinner out. The sound of water, even in a small garden, makes the whole space feel alive. And the best part, birds love it too often, stopping by for a sip or a splash, gifting you their song in return. Even recycled items can sing if you give them a chance. Old bottles strung together make charming chimes, each with its own tone when the wind stirs them. A row of tin cans, painted and hung loosely, can create a rustic percussion line that feels playful, almost childlike. These homemade instruments don't just add sound, they add story. They remind you that beauty doesn't come from perfection, but from creativity and care. I once heard a gardener say, "Silence can be lonely, but soft sound is company." That feels true, especially as we grow older and spend more time in quiet spaces. A little melody from the wind, a gentle drip of water, or the flutter of birds at a feeder can remind us that we are not alone in the garden. Life hums around us, steady and kind. By adding soothing sounds to your space, you create not just a garden for the eyes, but a sanctuary for the soul. There is something extraordinary about scent. It reaches memory faster than sight or sound. A whiff of lavender might carry you back to your grandmother's linen drawer, or the smell of roses could remind you of your wedding day. That is why adding fragrance to your garden is one of the most powerful ways to create peace. You don't need many plants, just a few chosen for their ability to perfume the air and soothe your spirit. Lavender is a perfect place to start. Hardy, forgiving, and endlessly generous, it offers fragrance that calms anxiety and softens restless thoughts. A single pot placed by your chair means that when you brush your hand across its stems, the air fills with its sweet herbal perfume. Rosemary works the same way, though often thought of as a cooking herb. It has a strong pine-like scent that clears the mind. One friend of mine keeps rosemary in an old galvanized bucket right beside her doorway. She told me she loves to run her fingers along its branches before stepping inside, carrying a bit of the garden with her into the kitchen. Jasmine, if your climate allows, is another treasure. Its tiny white flowers release fragrance strongest at night. wrapping you in a veil of sweetness just as the stars begin to show. I remember visiting my cousin's porch one summer evening when her jasmine was in bloom. We sat in silence, the air thick with perfume, and even without words, it felt as if the night itself was holding us close. That is the power of fragrance. It speaks when we cannot. If bending down to tend plants is difficult, you can lift fragrance to your level. Hanging baskets filled with petunias or sweet alyssum let scent drift easily on the air without requiring you to kneel or stoop. Small planters on tables, thrifted teacups filled with soil and mint, or even recycled tin cans painted in cheerful colors can hold herbs that give off aroma when touched. These little touches not only look charming but invite you to interact with your garden gently without strain. Fragrance is also deeply tied to emotion. Studies show it can ease stress, improve sleep, and even spark happiness. But beyond the science, it simply makes your garden personal. Your chosen scents become part of your daily rhythm, like greeting an old friend each time you step outside. And when family or neighbors visit, those fragrances become part of their memory of you. They'll say, "I remember her garden. It always smelled like lavender and roses." And that memory will carry on long after the blossoms fade. So when you design your garden, don't just think about what you'll see. Think about what you'll breathe in. Fragrance is the invisible thread that ties moments together, turning ordinary afternoons into cherished rituals. It's a gift you give yourself and anyone who shares your garden every single day. Close your eyes and imagine walking into a garden painted in bright, clashing tones, scarlet next to neon orange purple fighting with yellow. While it may be lively, it can also feel overwhelming. Now picture a softer palette, pale pink roses beside white daisies, cool green ferns swaying quietly, lavender buds standing in gentle rows. The second image invites you to breathe deeper, doesn't it? Color is more than decoration. It's emotion translated into petals and leaves. Choosing calming colors allows your garden to whisper instead of shout, wrapping you in peace the moment you step outside. Soft colors, blues, lavenders, whites, and pale greens tend to soothe the mind. They remind us of skies, seas, and quiet meadows. I once helped a neighbor redesign her porch garden. She had filled it with fiery reds because they were on sale, but she admitted she never lingered there. It felt too restless. We swapped those plants for pale pink begonias, silver green lamb's ear, and white impatiens. Within a week, she told me she found herself sitting out longer, sipping her tea until the last light faded. The colors had changed not just her garden, but her experience of time itself. You don't have to be strict with color, but think in terms of harmony rather than competition. A few bold flowers can shine if they're surrounded by softer tones, much like a solo instrument within an orchestra. For example, one pot of deep purple salvia looks regal when framed by soft white alyssum. A single yellow marigold glows brighter when it's surrounded by green foliage instead of more competing tones. Color balance creates peace, just as balance in life does. If bending down to plan or plant feels difficult, focus on vertical displays. Hanging baskets or shelves can hold calming blooms right at eye level, saving your back and letting you enjoy color without effort. Even painting old wooden crates in pale shades of blue or cream and filling them with greenery can shift the whole mood of a small space. A fresh coat of paint on an old bench in a soft pastel can harmonize with your flowers as much as any bloom. Color also changes with the seasons, offering you fresh waves of emotion. Spring may bring pastels, pink tulips, pale daffodils, while summer deepens into fuller shades of blue hydrangeas or lavender. Autumn offers softer golds and rust tones, and winter gardens can rest with the calming greens of evergreens or the clean white of snow. If you think of your garden as a painting that changes with the year, you'll never grow tired of it. The beauty of choosing calming colors is not about following rules. It's about asking yourself, how do I want to feel when I sit here? If you crave rest, lean on whites, greens, and gentle blues. If you need joy, sprinkle in pinks or soft yellows. Your heart knows what it needs, and your garden can mirror that wisdom back to you. In the end, the colors you choose are not for anyone else's eyes, but for your own peace. A garden's beauty doesn't have to fade when the sun goes down. In fact, some of the most peaceful moments arrive after dusk, when soft lighting begins to glow and the world feels hushed. Think of evenings when fireflies drifted through the yard, or when a candle on a table made a simple dinner feel like a celebration. Light has a way of changing not only how we see a space, but how we feel in it. With a few simple touches, you can turn your garden into an evening sanctuary that welcomes you long after day's end. One of the easiest ways to add this magic is with solar lights. Affordable and effortless, they gather the sun all day and gently release it at night. Line a pathway with them or tuck them into planters so that blooms are softly illuminated when twilight comes. I once helped a friend place solar lanterns along her small patio railing. When we sat out that evening, her ordinary backyard felt transformed, like stepping into a private retreat where the air itself seemed calmer. String lights also bring wonder, especially when draped across a porch or around a favorite tree. Their tiny bulbs twinkle like stars within reach, reminding us of holiday celebrations and childhood memories of outdoor gatherings. If bending and climbing to hang them feels difficult, look for solar string lights attached to clips that can easily fasten onto railings or hooks. Even a few strands along a fence can give the whole space a warm embrace. Candles and lanterns, too, carry a timeless charm. Old mason jars, thrifted teacups, or recycled tins can be turned into lanterns with nothing more than a tea light inside. Place them on tables or steps, and they'll cast a glow that feels both cozy and elegant. I recall one neighbor who collected mismatched jars from thrift stores. She filled them with small candles and lined her porch. On summer nights, it looked like a trail of fireflies had chosen her home as their resting place. If safety is a concern, especially around grandchildren or pets, battery-operated LED candles are a wonderful alternative. They flicker like real flame, but remove the worry. Some even come with timers, so they turn on at dusk without you lifting a finger. The effect is the same, a gentle living glow that tells your body it's time to relax now. Light in all its forms is more than decoration. It's an invitation. It asks you to linger a little longer, to notice the beauty of evening air, to share a quiet conversation, or to sit alone with your thoughts under a sky full of stars. With every lantern lit, you're not just brightening a garden, you're brightening your own spirit, reminding yourself that peace is possible at any hour. What truly makes a garden feel like home isn't just the plants or the lights. It's the story woven through the details. A relaxing garden is a reflection of you, dear friend, your history, your treasures, your memories. Without these touches, a garden can feel like it belongs to anyone. With them, it becomes unmistakably yours. Think of an old family heirloom, maybe a chipped teapot, or a weathered birdhouse that no longer fits indoors. Place it among your flowers, and suddenly, your garden is not just beautiful but personal. I once knew a woman who kept her late husband's worn boots. Instead of letting them gather dust, she planted bright pansies inside them. Those boots, resting on her porch, bloomed with new life. Each time she watered them, she smiled, remembering the many paths he had walked. That's the heart of personal touches. They turn ordinary objects into symbols of love, memory, and resilience. Your garden can become a gallery of your life, but softer, quieter, like a whisper rather than a shout. Thrift stores are gold mines for these accents. A painted ceramic bowl can become a bird bath. A cracked plate can be broken into pieces and arranged as a mosaic stepping stone. Even a weathered ladder can be leaned against a fence and transformed into a vertical display for potted herbs. These items carry charm because they're imperfect, just like us. Their flaws tell stories, and in a garden, flaws don't need hiding, they become beauty itself. Color can also carry your signature. Painting an old wooden chair in your favorite hue, or decorating terracotta pots with patterns you love, adds a layer of yourself. Don't worry if the brush strokes are uneven. Perfection is not the goal, connection is. When grandchildren visit, they'll notice those hand-painted pots and ask, "Did you make that, Grandma?" And in answering, you pass along more than a craft, you share a piece of yourself. Even small gestures matter. A thrifted picture frame hung on a fence holding a climbing vine as though it were a living portrait. A quilted cushion stitched from old fabric scraps. A sign with a favorite quote, reminding you daily of strength, love, or joy. Each personal touch transforms the garden from a nice yard into your sanctuary. The greatest gift of these details is that they keep you company. When you sit among them, you are not surrounded by strangers, but by stories, each one tied to your own journey. And when others visit, they will see not only flowers and chairs, but you, your taste, your creativity, your history. That, my dear friend, is the difference between a garden you admire and a garden you belong to. Every garden carries a story, and often the most powerful ones begin in forgotten corners. I think of a neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who lived down the street for many years. After her husband passed, she let her backyard grow wild. Weeds rose tall and the patio furniture rusted quietly in the rain. She confessed to me once that stepping outside only reminded her of what she had lost. But one spring, her granddaughter brought her a tray of pansies and said, "Grandma, let's plant these together." They chose a single patch by the back steps, cleared away the weeds, and tucked those cheerful little faces into the soil. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Within weeks, Mrs. Henderson began adding more. An old bird bath got scrubbed and filled, a forgotten chair received a cushion, and before long, her yard bloomed again. She told me later, "It felt like I was planting myself back into life." That, dear friend, is the renewal a garden offers. It doesn't just revive soil, it revives spirit. Even the act of caring for one small plant becomes an act of choosing hope. You may have your own story, perhaps, of a season where tending the earth felt impossible. Loss, illness, or change can make even the simplest joys feel far away. But renewal doesn't demand grand gestures. It begins with one pot of marigolds, one herb snipped for soup, one chair placed in the sun. Little by little, those gestures stitch life back together. And when we share these stories, the garden becomes more than a private retreat. It becomes a testimony to resilience. Visitors don't just see flowers, they see courage, healing, and love. I believe this is why older gardens with their chipped pots and mismatched treasures feel richer than newly planted ones. They carry layers of renewal, each bloom telling of a time when someone chose to try again. So, if your own patch of ground feels weary, or if your spirit feels tired, know this: the garden waits patiently for you. It doesn't ask for perfection, it simply asks for your presence, your willingness to begin again. Renewal is not about erasing what came before, it's about letting beauty return even after seasons of loss. Like Mrs. Henderson, you may find that in reviving a garden, you also revive yourself. As we grow older, the joy of gardening sometimes collides with the limits of our bodies. Knees that once bent easily may protest now, and lifting heavy bags of soil can feel like a mountain to climb. But here's the truth: a relaxing garden doesn't have to hurt. With a little creativity, you can shape your space to meet you where you are, instead of forcing yourself to meet it. Accessible gardening isn't about doing less, it's about doing wisely, so that every moment in the garden feels like a gift rather than a chore. Raised planters are one of the most helpful tools. Imagine a sturdy wooden box lifted to waist height. No bending, no straining, just comfortable tending. I once visited a community garden where older members had built long raised beds from recycled lumber. They filled them with lettuce, herbs, and zinnias. One woman told me, "I can finally garden again without my back screaming at me." That bed wasn't just holding plants. It was holding her dignity, her freedom to keep doing what she loved. Hanging baskets are another gentle solution. Suspended at eye level, they let you enjoy color and fragrance without stooping. I've seen thrifted wire baskets lined with coconut fiber, brimming with trailing petunias, or ivy, bringing beauty right to where you stand. Window boxes, too, put plants within easy reach, and they can be mounted at a height that feels comfortable for you. Lightweight tools make a big difference as well. Many garden centers carry ergonomic designs, tools with cushioned handles or long-handled trowels that keep you from crouching. If budget is a concern, thrift stores often have treasures: old serving spoons for digging or kitchen ladles repurposed as scoops. With imagination, even household items can become gentle allies in your garden work. Another friend of mine, after arthritis slowed her, began gardening from a seated stool with wheels. She laughed and called it her garden chariot. From there, she could roll along her flower bed, trimming and watering with ease. Watching her, I realized accessible gardening isn't about limitation, it's about liberation. It proves that age doesn't take away our creativity. It simply invites us to adapt. The lesson here is that gardening should nourish you, not exhaust you. By adjusting how you plant and care for your space, you ensure that the act remains joyful. A relaxing garden is not measured by how much you can bend or lift, but by how gently it meets you in your season of life. And when it does, you'll discover that peace grows just as beautifully in raised planters and hanging baskets as it does in any sprawling bed. One of the quietest joys a garden can give is the company of creatures who find their way in. Birds at the feeder, butterflies drifting from bloom to bloom, bees humming gently. These visitors turn your garden into a living conversation. Their presence reminds us that even small spaces are part of a greater world, connected by wings, songs, and cycles older than we can imagine. Welcoming wildlife doesn't require grand effort, only small invitations. And in return, you'll receive companionship that feels like a blessing. Start with the birds. A simple feeder, even one made from a thrifted teacup or a recycled milk jug, will bring them to your yard. Once, I sat with a friend on her porch as chickadees darted back and forth from a homemade feeder she'd painted with her granddaughter. She said the sight of those tiny wings gave her a reason to step outside every morning. It wasn't just about the birds, it was about the joy of expecting them, of knowing life would visit daily. Butterflies can be coaxed in with nectar-rich flowers, zinnias, lantana, or milkweed. Planting even a few of these in pots creates a landing place for beauty on the wing. Bees, too, are drawn to lavender, sunflowers, and herbs like thyme. Their soft buzzing adds a rhythm to the air, a reminder of nature's work continuing quietly around us. Far from being a nuisance, these bees carry a calming steadiness, teaching us the value of persistence and presence. Even small water sources invite life. A shallow dish filled with stones and water becomes a butterfly sipping station. A bird bath, whether bought or crafted from a thrifted bowl, brings feathered guests who splash and preen in the sunshine. I remember a widow in my neighborhood who told me the sound of robins bathing outside her kitchen window became her favorite comfort after her husband's passing. It's like laughter returning, she said. The beauty of welcoming wildlife is that it transforms your garden from something you look at into something you share. Each visitor brings movement, sound, and surprise. They remind you that your little sanctuary is not an island, but part of a living network. And there is deep comfort in that. To see a butterfly land near your chair, or to hear a finch sing while you sip your tea, is to feel included in life's great chorus. So as you plan your relaxing garden, leave space for these companions. Plant flowers they'll love, set out water, or hang a feeder. In doing so, you won't just be creating beauty for yourself. You'll be offering refuge to the small travelers of the sky. And their gratitude will arrive not in words, but in song's wings and the quiet magic of their presence. There's a special kind of freedom that comes when you step into a space that feels open, uncluttered, and calm. Gardens are no different. Over time, we often collect pots, tools, decorations, and half-finished projects that scatter across the yard. Instead of soothing, they can begin to weigh on the spirit. A relaxing garden is not about how much you add, but how carefully you choose. Decluttering doesn't mean stripping your space bare, it means giving your eyes and heart room to rest. I once visited a friend whose backyard was overflowing with well-meaning items. Every surface held something old: planters rusted, watering cans, lawn ornaments faded from the sun. She confessed that she rarely sat outside anymore because it felt busy rather than peaceful. Together, we spent an afternoon sorting. We kept her favorite clay pots and her grandmother's bird bath. The rest she donated or repurposed. By evening, the yard looked twice as large. She sat in her chair, exhaled, and said, "I can finally see my roses again." Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a garden is space to breathe. Start by asking yourself which pieces truly bring me joy and which simply sit there out of habit. Keep the items that tell a story or lift your spirit. A chipped teapot turned planter may stay because it holds memory. A broken plastic pot with no charm can go. The same applies to plants. Too many different kinds can overwhelm the senses. Instead of crowding your garden with everything you can find, focus on a few chosen blooms or herbs you love. Their simplicity will shine brighter without competition. Decluttering also makes gardening easier on your body. Fewer pots to water, fewer trinkets to dust or shift around. It frees your time and energy for what matters most, sitting in your chair watching the light change, breathing in the fragrance you've nurtured. One neighbor of mine, after clearing out years of accumulated items, told me she felt like she'd reclaimed her own time. I spend less effort maintaining things, she said, and more time just being here. That is the very essence of peace. A minimalist garden doesn't have to feel empty. Think of it as a canvas where each chosen object, each bloom, each chair has room to shine. Instead of your eyes darting from one thing to another, they can rest, linger, and truly see. Your mind follows, growing quieter, calmer, more present. In a world full of noise and clutter, a pared-down garden becomes a sanctuary of clarity. So as you shape your space, don't only ask what you should add. Ask also, what can I lovingly let go of? What can I release so that beauty in its simplest and most powerful form can have room to grow? That gentle practice will not only transform your garden, it will transform the way you feel in it. A relaxing garden is not only about what you plant or place, it's about how you live within it. Gardens become sanctuaries when we weave them into the rhythm of daily life, turning them from decoration into devotion. Rituals, those small repeated actions, have the power to anchor us. They give us something to look forward to, a steady thread in the weave of changing days. And when practiced in a garden, rituals become even more restorative because they happen under open skies among living things. Imagine beginning your mornings with a steaming cup of tea in your favorite chair, watching dew cling to leaves as the sun rises. Or think of evenings when you light a small lantern and write a few lines in a journal, letting the day settle onto paper while crickets sing. These simple acts don't require effort or expense, but they turn your garden into more than a space. They turn it into a companion. I once knew an older gentleman who made it his ritual to walk slowly through his backyard every evening, touching each plant gently with his hand. "I like them to know I'm here," he told me with a smile. For him, it wasn't about checking progress or pruning. It was about connection, a daily greeting between old friends. Another woman I met always said a prayer while watering her herbs. "Each time I pour water, I send a blessing," she explained. Her garden became a chapel, not through grandeur, but through repetition. Rituals can also involve sharing. Inviting grandchildren to pick strawberries each summer, setting aside Sundays to read in the shade, or brewing mint tea from your own leaves when friends visit. These are rituals that layer memory onto your garden. Long after the flowers fade, the memories remain stitched into the fabric of your life. The beauty of rituals is that they teach us to slow down. In a culture that urges us to rush, to do more, to always seek the next thing, rituals whisper a different truth. Peace is found here in this moment. When you create them in your garden, you build an anchor that steadies you through storms of worry or change. Your ritual doesn't need to be grand. It could be as simple as sitting quietly for 5 minutes each day, letting the wind brush across your face. So think about the small actions that bring you calm and let them take root in your garden. With time, these rituals become part of the space itself. Just as a path becomes worn through repeated footsteps, your garden becomes sacred through repeated presence. And in those moments, you'll discover that the greatest harvest your garden offers is not flowers or herbs, but peace itself. One of the gifts of a garden is that it never stays the same. Just as our own lives move through seasons of growth, rest, change, and renewal, so too does the earth beneath our feet. Leaning into these natural rhythms instead of fighting them allows your garden to feel alive all year long. Seasonal shifts don't demand constant reinvention. They simply invite small, thoughtful changes that keep the space fresh and meaningful. Spring is a time of awakening. Even the smallest pots can hold early daffodils, tulips, or pansies that bring bursts of color after the quiet grays of winter. I once visited a friend who placed thrifted enamel mugs filled with violas along her porch railing in March. They looked like little cups of sunshine greeting her each morning. Those tiny touches told her heart life is beginning again. Summer brings fullness. This is the season when herbs spill from their containers, tomatoes ripen in hanging baskets, and flowers reach their brightest. It's the time to enjoy meals outside, shaded by an umbrella, or beneath the glow of string lights. One woman I know makes it her summer ritual to host iced tea afternoons with neighbors, her garden becoming a stage for laughter and connection. Autumn is softer, but no less beautiful. As blossoms fade, you can swap them for pots of chrysanthemums in warm golds and rusts, or simply let seed heads stand offering food for birds. Pumpkins, whether real or painted, add charm to porches and patios. I remember an older couple who lined their steps with mismatched gourds each fall, saying it reminded them of the abundance of years gone by. Their garden became a celebration not of what was ending, but of what had been gathered. Winter, though quiet, has its own peace. Evergreen branches in pots, dried hydrangea blooms, or simple solar lanterns glowing against the snow bring beauty to the stillness. A friend of mine places a small, thrifted bench near her window draped with a plaid blanket so she can sit with a cup of cocoa and watch the frost sparkle on her bare rose canes. Even in dormancy, the garden holds her close. Adapting your garden season by season doesn't require endless work. It's about gentle transitions. Swap a cushion cover for a warmer shade, trade one pot of blooms for another, or hang a wreath that speaks of the time of year. These shifts remind us that life is cyclical, that rest is as valuable as growth, and that each moment, whether bursting with blossoms or bare with branches, has its own kind of beauty. In embracing the seasons, you not only keep your garden alive, you remind yourself that change is natural and that every stage carries its own peace. A relaxing garden mirrors life itself, showing us that beauty doesn't end with summer, but simply takes new forms, waiting patiently to be noticed. As we draw our time together to a close, dear friend, I hope you can picture yourself in that garden you've been dreaming of, a space not defined by size or cost, but by the way it welcomes you. Perhaps it's a small chair by a single blooming pot, or a winding corner lined with fragrant herbs. Perhaps it's lit softly with lanterns, or alive with the chatter of birds and the gentle hum of bees. Whatever form it takes, it is yours, and it holds a reflection of your care, your creativity, and your life's story. Aging brings changes, some gentle, some difficult. Yet in the garden age is not a weakness, but a wisdom. Every wrinkle in your hands is like the rings of a tree proof that you have lived and tended, weathered and grown. When you lift a spade, water a pot, or simply sit and watch a sunset, you are continuing a tradition as old as time itself. A garden does not ask for youth or wealth. It asks only for presence. And in return, it gives peace. I think of all the gardens I visited over the years, some filled with wild abundance, others with just a single rosebush. Each one carried the imprint of its keeper, a kind of fingerprint made of soil and soul. That's what makes a garden more than decoration. It becomes a sanctuary, a place of memory, a place of renewal. And as you shape yours, you will be reminded daily that your hands, no matter their age, still create beauty. So, as you step forward, consider what small act you might begin today. Perhaps placing one thrifted chair in a sunny corner. Perhaps planting a pot of lavender by your door. Perhaps hanging a set of chimes that sing with the wind. These simple acts are not about impressing anyone else. They are about giving yourself the gift of peace. Which idea speaks to you most, dear friend? Which little change makes your heart stir with anticipation? I would love for you to reflect on that, and if you'd like, share it with me. And if you found comfort here, I invite you to subscribe, so that together we can continue building lives filled with small joys and gentle inspiration. Until next time, may your days be filled with light. May your garden bring you comfort, and may you always find beauty waiting at your doorstep. Happy gardening, dear friend.